But lowering it, that you have to have a reason to lower it, and if your reason is that it is getting worse compared to what? The Tiger 2P is an amazing tank. The 88mm KWK-43 is probably the best gun at 6.3. It is one of the best guns at 6.7. So I have no idea what you are on about. The only issue the tank has is that it has cheeks on its turret that people can penetrate. That's why people struggle against the Tiger 2H, because sometimes what happens is that you shoot where you're supposed to on the turret cheek, and it doesn't do anything. It just eats the shot. Whereas on the Tiger 2P, you go through it. Let's look at other stuff which is at 6.0. Or at 6.0, because this is the proposal. You have the 76 Jumbo, which gets eaten by the Tiger 2P. You have the T25, which used to be at 6.0, now they dropped it. That's actually quite a good matchup, but right now it's against the Pershing. Another matchup where the Tiger 2P can shoot just straight through it. Let's see 6.0 for other nations. For the Russians, you have literally one tank at 6.0 that I can see, which is the ISU-122S. So let's go to 5.7 or 5.3. T-34-85, seen as one of the best tier 4 medium tanks in the game. Yep, the T-34-85 can kill the Tiger 2P, but the Tiger 2P definitely doesn't struggle against it. Let's go for the British. 6.0, you have the FV-4202, a terrible tank, because it doesn't get Sabo, it gets solid shot, so even if he hits you in your turret, guess what's going to happen? It's going to kill one person, and it's going to sit there like a lemming, reloading pretty quickly, so it's going to shoot you again somewhere, and hopefully it can pen, maybe in your driver port, even not the driver port, but lower glacis. But then you're going to get your gunner back and you're going to one-shot it because you have that 88mm. What's the Japanese going to do against you, even though the Japanese don't face you? Oh, they've got a bulldog. Oh, well, that's great. You eat that for breakfast. I don't understand why you need to drop this Tiger 2P. It's already been dropped to 6.3. If you think the Tiger 2P is the same as a Tiger E, I don't know what to say. Also, at this BR, Germany is dominating. Germany dominates from 6.3 to 6.7. That's why you have a ton of people playing German 6.7 at all times. I don't know why you want to drop the Tiger 2P. But as I said, the way that Gaijin have said that they changed BRs, they change BRs is through statistics, so how the players are doing at it, which is why the ME262 still has a high BR even though it gets outclassed by a lot of stuff it faces. But I still don't know these tanks which have been added into the game, which are so much better than the Tiger 2P, meaning that it needs to be dropped. I don't think they exist. It's still a top tier tank, which is why a lot of people use the Tiger 2H and not it, because the Tiger 2H is a superior top tier tank. That doesn't make the Tiger 2P not top tier. So let's move on. There is a Type 60 SPIR RR. This SPG has two configurations, marching and battle. Will the marching configuration be implemented? It can still fire in this configuration incidentally. The answer is we don't currently have plans for this. This would be kind of like a random add-on. It's definitely not top priority. It's very similar to when I think about the P61. They said they will eventually put a modification in game for the P61 so you can have the 50 cals just face forward and fire at the same time as the 20s. But something tells me that's not a high priority on the list at Gaijin. Next question. Will there be any changes to the repair mechanics? It looks frankly absurd when damage dealt by a high caliber 122mm cannon is repaired more quickly than the cannon reloads, especially in simulator battles. The answer. We arrived at the current repair speeds, including for SB, based on the results of reviews in part from players themselves. Initially the time was much longer. We have no plans to change this. They were incredibly long. Up to, I remember in the CBT, sometimes you had to wait like an hour for your vehicle to be repaired. It was absolutely astonishing. The issue is not the fact that it takes not enough time to reload, or it takes too short of a time to repair. It's crews. Crews are massive if you look at it. If you have an aced out crew compared to not even touch crew, it's a huge difference, especially in ground forces. In air you can get away with it unless you have no G tolerance or anything like that. But when we look at tank crews, it makes a huge difference. It's why sometimes when you shoot into a Tiger II with a Caernarvon, it pens with its Sabo, and then you get an orange crew member. That's why, because of the crew skills. So the question should be aimed at the crew skills, because I think the crew skills do make too much. They do too much. They need to be toned down at least a little bit. Next question. Dear developers, when will a turret be able to drop onto the ground after being blown off by a shell explosion? When it just falls through the textures, it still looks bad. Many patches ago now, you said you'd enable this feature when the game was released, but now there's no sign of it. Are there problems with it? A. There are certain difficulties with this, but we still plan to implement the feature. That is a nice feature. If you've ever seen a tank blown up in War Thunder, what you'll realise is that the turret kind of just disappears into the ground after it falls off the tank. It would be nice to have a solid turret. It's obviously not at the top of the list. What it would be great, as a personal thing, it would be absolutely wonderful, because what would happen is I would be able to make like more realistic videos when it comes to tanks. I love making aircraft like mini movies, but when it comes to tanks, I haven't found a good way of doing it where it looks good yet, but that would definitely add to it. It's obviously not a huge thing, but it is definitely something they promised, so it's nice to see that they're still thinking about it. Will we see more Chinese tanks as premium event reward vehicles for the Soviet tree in the future, such as the Type 58 and the Type 59, or will there be a separate Chinese nation tree in the future? Answer. It is possible that we will add other tanks of the Chinese nation in the form of promotional or premium tanks. Good stuff. That's really good. Because most of the Chinese tanks that ever existed around this time period were copies of existing tanks, but slightly modified. Kind of like how you see the late tier 5 of Japan right now. So I think they are perfect breeding grounds for premium vehicles or promotional vehicles, because you take an existing tank in game and slightly modify it. Maybe you slightly change the gun, maybe different shells, slightly different speeds, just a little thing that you change. So it makes it unique, even though it's not fully unique, but it still works well. It still will give you exactly what you want, which is basically where that Russian tank came from. Next question. Will the 7.7mm 303 Browning aircraft machine gun, British and American sound, be updated? It is currently the oldest aircraft gun sound still remaining and sounds somewhat out of place compared to the others. The answer is work on the sounds in-game is ongoing, so it is possible. So it would be nice to get some updated sounds in the game, but just as an overall thing, War Thunder now supports mods when it comes to sounds and stuff like that, so if you want a tutorial to show you how to put like a sound mod in game, because I use the Boris Ground Forces mod, which makes Ground Forces sound absolutely amazing. So I'm sure if you want like the 7.7 Browning to sound better, you could make a mod for it. And you know, it's supported by Gaijin. They are completely fine with it. Even the CEO showed people how to do it. But if anybody wants a tutorial on how to do it, let me know and I'll show you. So on to the next question. What possibility is there to see more novel but unique, such as opening cockpits that we already have, Features for aircraft like drop tanks, folding wings, naval aircraft, RATO or RATO, landing lights, and working tail nose when taxiing on the ground. The answer? Yes, there are several features we'd like to implement for aircraft. First of all, we will continue creating operating canopies. Secondly, we are working on animated chassis parts. Thirdly, a more realistic bomb sight. As for the visuals, we'd like to add exhaust stack flame. So, they're working on operating canopies. They've already added in cockpits, so canopies is the logical next step. And also the chassis parts. That's pretty cool. Anything that is like a quality of life thing, like the cockpits I see is like a quality of life add-on, and I also see this as a quality of life add-on. It would be nice to have landing lights. That would be very useful, especially in night battles in Simulator, but you don't generally get that many. Drop tanks is kind of interesting. I'm not sure how they would work so well. I mean, we have drop tanks in game on certain vehicles that it would be nice to get rid of them, but you know, it's not the end of the world that they're there. But yeah, quality of life changes like that are really interesting, and also we'd like to add exhaust stack flame. That would be so cool. One of the greatest add-ons, in my opinion, to War Thunder Ground Forces is that you can see exhaust fumes from other tanks, and you can see them from your own. The exhaust fumes are wonderful, and having the exhaust stack flame on jets and stuff like that, or on other aircraft, it would look so good. It would look absolutely amazing. Just like it does in IL-2 Battle of Battle of Stalingrad, sorry, and stuff like that. It would be great to have that in game, so that is a nice little add-on, and it shouldn't be too hard to implement, thinking about it. Then we go into Navy. In recent naval tests, I noticed that the rangefinder in the scope doesn't show a distance of more than 3,000, which means you can't fly further than that either. It feels like the shells just won't fly farther than that. Is that an intentional limitation? The answer: the shells do fly much farther, of course. It's just that the rangefinder doesn't provide a ballistic solution for that angle of elevation at distances greater than 3 kilometers. This is a temporary issue that wasn't particularly problematic for boat skirmishes with automatic guns, but has become important on large and open maps. So this is something that they're going to fix. It seems to be an issue with the rangefinder. We see it in tanks too. I mean, you could fire like a shell for like 5 kilometers, but you know, it would be very hard to aim. I'm still not that jazzed about naval forces, so I won't stay on it. And the last question is a general question. Do you plan to divide the pilot's hitbox and possibly the tankers into deadly and critical zones so that when you hit them, for example in the head or torso, it would be a one-shot, but when hitting an arm or leg, it would reduce the state of the pilot/tanker? On top of that, right now killing someone by hitting them in the foot makes one think of the mythical Achilles and his heel. Answer: we don't have any such plans at the moment. It is to imitate this divide that tankers don't die from any impact, but only from a threshold impact or several small ones that break the threshold together. So, one of the things that has always struck me as interesting, that whenever I hear War Thunder players talking about this, if you get shot in the arm and you are flying something, that's really going to impair how you fly that thing. If you get shot, you're going to try and head home as quickly as possible. So, you're going to be disengaged from the fight. So if that knocks somebody unconscious in battle, technically in War Thunder, I'm completely fine with that. Same with tanks, right? If somebody blows off my foot in a tank, I'm not going to be very combat effective. I'm going to be worried about my foot, which has just come off my body. So, and also just as a logistical thing, making pilots' hitboxes, into deadly and critical zones and everything like this, it takes a hell of a lot of work. This isn't CSGO, where you have basically two characters and then you have to create very, very precise hitboxes for each character. In War Thunder, for every vehicle, you'd have to especially in tanks, you would have to model where the hitboxes go and everything like that. It's a hell of a lot of work when you think about it. So these general hitboxes, in my opinion, are completely fine. So that's all the questions. Not a ton of them this time, but at least there's not many contradictions like there were a few of the other times. Or just some which it felt like they were dodging the question. This time, shorter answers, much more to the point. I think that's the way to go from now on. So, well done to Gaijin, and generally not much like, not many crazy questions answered really. Very middle of the road stuff, but at least it gives us an insight on what they're working on, what they're prioritizing, such as ATGMs for the Japanese and canopies for aircraft, so at least it gives you a little insight on where they're going from here. But, you know, it would be nice to... there was... did I miss a question? No, I must have read it somewhere else, but basically they were talking about how they wanted to change the tank aimer. I can't remember what it's called right now. But the gunner sight in tanks, they wanted to make it more realistic. And I think that would be another massive step in the game. When it comes to aircraft cockpits, for me, the big step that tanks need, or not need, but the one to work towards, is having realistic gunner sights for tanks. Now, that would be a hell of a lot of work, very much like the cockpits for aircraft, but I do think that will be the next step when it comes to it. So hopefully we'll see that in the future, but who knows. I hope you enjoyed the video, and well, I'll see you next time.